Mr. McCarthy, lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening. So first of all, we'll take the January 9th minutes for approval. And when everybody's had a chance to take a look, if you haven't already, we'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Okay, by John.
Second.
Second by Neil. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was quick.
Actually, I'm going to abstain.
The announcements are that we will meet on February 13th and February 27th, and that the work review sessions will begin prior to those meetings at 5 o'clock, the regular meetings being at 6. On Monday, January 30th, there will be a non-public and work session meeting starting at 5. The budget hearing for February 9th, 2017 at 6 p.m. has been scheduled on an as-needed basis. And a public hearing will be held on Thursday, February 9th, 2017 at 6 p.m. for the reading of petitioned warrant articles. All of these meetings will be held here unless otherwise posted. Citizens wishing to be listed on the agenda should notify the town hall before noon, the Friday before the scheduled meeting. By way of comment, I just wanted to acknowledge that we received a letter from Plymouth Village Water and Sewer confirming their verbal announcement to us at the prior meeting that they wanted us to remove the sand shed and vacate the area it's located in by June 30th of this year. I think the next item is visitors. Victor Gennaro. Would you? Yes, please.
Hi, Mr. Conklin and the board. I just came, I wanted to speak to you because I wasn't given the opportunity to do so before. I received a letter from you recently. I got it on Saturday of this weekend, saying that my activity possibly represented criminal trespassing or criminal mischief. And it regarded me plowing a portion of the runway to remove my plane. It also said here that it was unauthorized activity. And I just wanted to comment on a couple of things regarding this. In November of this last year, I sold my plane, and the person who purchased it was supposed to send a pilot to remove the plane, and unfortunately, because of weather and some other issues, he couldn't. So finally it went into December, and we had our first minor snowfall. In the middle of December, or towards the later portion of December, the airport manager, Colin, called me and asked me when I was going to move the aircraft. I told him I would move it as soon as I possibly could, but there were some issues because I wasn't authorized to fly the plane because I wasn't on the insurance and I no longer owned it. So it took me 4 or 5 days in order for that to accomplish. Mr. MacGyver also asked me specifically to move my plane and remove it from the hangar because he wanted to use his plane to use the skis and fly on and off the snow. And I told him that I would be happy to do that. Where there was actually sun and an ability to fly the plane. So I solicited a friend to come over to plow out the front of the barn so I could take the plane out. And then I plowed one small pathway over to a strip, and then I did a 16-foot wide strip so I could get the plane off the ground and leave. I tried to be very courteous. I tried to be very careful about doing so. So I have a concern here because I'm being told that my activity was unauthorized, but yet I had spoken to the airport manager before doing so, and he asked me to remove the plane. So I would think that if he asked me to remove the plane and he was aware that it had snowed, that some element of snow removal was going to be required in order to do so. Secondly, he called me up saying that he was upset that I had done it the way I did it. I told him that I'm very sorry about that. I was trying to acquiesce to his wishes, and I asked him how we could mitigate it. He told me that he would call the Pemmy Baker snowmobile. I said, okay, but let me also call Don Stope, because I know that he's currently using a groomer over in Ashland. If I can bring it over, we'll do it tomorrow. I called Mr. Stope. He said, I just turned the thing back in. So I called Colin and I said to him, would you please ask the Pemmy Baker to do it? Ask them to give me a bill for their time, and I would be more than happy to pay it. I also told him at that time that I would be very willing to take care of any grass that was damaged and fix it as soon as the snow melted, but there was nothing I could do about the little bit of grass while there was snow on the ground. And also the area of grass that was damaged was not on the runway, it was over towards the hangar. In the interim, I called Colin MacGyver 11 times. 11 phone calls I made to Mr. MacGyver to try to inquire from him, did he get the people to fix it? What does he need me to do? What can I do? How much do you need me to pay? And how do I manage this? He did not answer 11 phone calls. On 11 phone calls, I got voicemail and told that his mailbox was empty. But on one occasion,
You mean full?
his mailbox was full. On one occasion, I was able to leave a message. So I think that I acted in very good honesty and due diligence in order to communicate with him to try to mitigate the circumstances, but yet he did not provide me with one opportunity or the courtesy of calling me back. So I'm kind of offended. I'm a pretty decent citizen. I've lived here for nearly 20 years. I don't like being accused of criminal trespassing or mischief. I don't like being accused of doing something unauthorized when I had spoken to the manager of the airport before I did anything. I will agree that I didn't think it through completely, and perhaps I should have had Colin there in order when I brought the plane out, but I was trying to act in very good faith here, and I was trying to act in good faith all along. And then finally, your letter saying for me to pay this snowmobile club $1,000 actually sounds like a bit of extortion. I mean, the town will agree to not pursue criminal charges if you're willing to pay $1,000 to the snowmobile club. Well, where did that figure come from? Did they give us a bill for time? Was there any amount of, how did that number come about? So I'm asking you two things. If you feel that this is completely the way it is, I'll be happy to walk away. I'll pay the $1,000. I'll be done with it. But I think that you as a select board had an obligation to me as a former resident of this town up until November of this year, and a taxpayer who has owned 2 properties, as a citizen who has been a responsible member of this airport. I think you owed it to me, at the very least, to give me a phone call and ask me what was up. I'm just asking for some courtesy, and I didn't receive any.
Let me ask you a question. It sounds to me like there was some discussion between you and Colin before you moved the plane. But it sounds to me like that occurred prior to the snowfall. Is that right?
No, there had been one snowfall first.
Well, the big snowfall.
Well, there was a snowfall first. Colin had called me. I told him yes, and I would get it out of there over the next couple of days. And in the interim of those next couple of days, it snowed. But Colin knew fully well that within the next couple of days, I was planning to move the plane. And so he also knew that it snowed.
So you think that he should have called you and said, whoa, you can't move the plane now because we had this big snowfall? And is that the issue?
No, I'm just saying is, You say here it was unauthorized. You say that it was unauthorized and that I was trespassing. I was under the impression that I was being asked to move the plane and that I was trying to comply with their wishes to do it in a timely manner.
Well, I don't think you were really being asked to move the plane. You wanted to move the plane, right?
No, I did want to move the plane, but Colin also specifically said, I would appreciate if you would move the plane so that I can get my plane out and use it on the snow. So I was asked to do it.
All right. There's the other issue here that was, raised with us and seemed most important was that Colin told us that and I'm no flyer, so I don't really know, I don't see the airport very often, but that planes fly in and out of there all winter, and that they do so on skis for the most part, because you can't fly in with wheels, I imagine, in the snow. So the mounds of snow that you create by plowing creates a hazard to planes that might land there because they can't see that. And so somebody could have come in there, the way I heard the story, after that thing was plowed up and flipped over or otherwise, created some serious accident, which we didn't have any opportunity to mitigate because we didn't know. I don't think Colin knew that you had plowed the runway. You didn't tell him you had plowed the runway.
Well, let me respond. You have two questions there, and I'll respond to both.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct that I may have created a hazard which I didn't really realize that I had done. As soon as I was aware that I had done so, I said, let's do whatever I can to try to fix it, and I was willing to assume responsibility for that, and I still am willing to assume responsibility for it. But the other point, though, is, I am a pilot. It is a very well-recognized fact of flying that before you touch your plane down on skis or on the water or anything else, you're supposed to reconnoiter the area, you're supposed to know what you're doing before you land there, and you're supposed to know that it's safe. And there is nowhere in any pilot instruction, etc., where they say that you can make an assumption that something is safe. So it is an onus on the pilot. Yes, it could have, and I agree that I may have inadvertently created a hazard. But I was doing everything I could.
Just to explore that a little bit more, the way it was described to me is that somebody could look at that and not realize that those snow humps were there, or whatever you call them.
Yeah.
Because white is white, from up high.
That, and I have said to you, that's
If
possible.
we're going to reconnoiter and look around and assure that it's, maybe we don't see it because it's not visible to the naked eye, and that's
But,
really the danger.
there could also have been a fallen log. There also could be a dead animal.
Both of which you would probably see.
Not necessarily. Not
Well, if
covered.
it was a polar bear, it would be white.
Well, we can argue back and forth, Mike, and I'm not here to do that, and I know you got a big meeting. All I'm saying is, I think that I should have, number one, been afforded the opportunity to speak to you before you sent this letter to me.
Okay.
I was under the impression that I was authorized to do so. I wasn't trying to be a jerk here. I was trying to get the thing out of the way for Colin. I was trying to finish a transaction and move the plane. I was put in a situation that I didn't completely create, and I was trying to do the best I could. And also, more importantly, I assumed responsibility for it. I offered a plan which how to help it. I offered to pay for it. I made every effort to communicate multiple times to see that it was taken care of. I made 11 phone calls to the airport manager to try to address it, and not one was returned.
Okay.
So I'm asking you to reconsider two things. This statement about criminal trespass and mischief, because I wasn't trying to do that. And I'm also asking you to reconsider the $1,000, because I think that's excessive. Even if it took them 10 hours, the normal rate of reimbursement for the snow people from the Ashland area, they say the state reimburses them $45 an hour. So even if it took them 10 hours, which it didn't, make it $50 an hour. Make it a $500, and I'll be happy to do that. And also, I am willing to go and fix the grass in the spring, and I already said I was willing to do that.
Okay. Could we, thank you. Can we, Colin, did you want to address this again?
I'm all set at this time. Just maintaining the safety of the airport is just absolutely
Okay.
critical.
Did you,
You can't.
Yeah.
oh, we have a public hearing at 6:15.
Right, so you need to get
You
me,
better do that, and then we'll just have to take this up when it's over.
all right. So
Probably, yeah. Is that okay?
Or we
Can
can
you
get
stay?
back to Mr. Gennaro.
Or we'll get back to you.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All I was asking for, Mr. Conklin, was, I feel I was adjudicated without any form of due process. And I've had that now. And I think you're reasonable people. And I'll accept your decision.
All right.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate
Thank you, Victor. So it's 6:17, and I wasn't watching the clock, but we have a public hearing scheduled on our budget for 6:15. I think we have the Budget Committee here, do we? And how do we do this? Do you guys want to come up here? Pardon me?
Not normally, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no?
This is your meeting, Mr. Chair.
All right.
You go through the budget one page at a time.
Okay. We're chuckling because we had a little talk about it, and,
Mr. Bolton was wrong.
well, no, I wouldn't say that. All right, so, does everybody have a copy of the budget who wants one? And, we're gonna go through the budget one page at a time. I guess we'll start with page 1, since that's the one that's most readily accessible, and it's at the beginning. And I'll just ask if anybody has any comments or questions about any of the items on page 1. And if not, we'll go to page 2. Same question. Any questions or comments on page 2? Hearing none. Page 3. Page 4. I'm going to start doing them 2 at a time. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. Seeing none, I'll go to page 5. Page 6. Any comments or questions on page 7? Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Looking ahead, I see that's halfway. So we'll take a short break and then move to page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. That's 2/3. My math is right. Page 17. see anybody with any questions, so we'll go to page 18. Page 19. Page 20. Page 21.
Mike,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Marcia.
I'm Marcia Schmidt-Lane. I'm on the Budget Committee. I'm also a citizen of Plymouth and have been for a long time, and I really appreciate the way that, in general, the town has done such a good job of holding down our taxes. 8 out of the last 10 years, our town taxes have been level funded, which is just amazing. Our taxes have gone up not necessarily because of town, but because of school and other things that are associated with it. I am, however, concerned that because we have done this so consistently, that people in town have gotten used to no taxes going up for the town, and people in town are not being paid what they're worth. Capital funding, and this is why I mentioned it on this page. I reached this page, I looked down and I said, we're not putting money where we need to. How are we going to be able to support the roads? How are we able to keep people working? I think at some point the selectmen have got to raise taxes, and I think that the town's people who work here deserve it, and I think our infrastructure needs it. That's my comment.
Thank you. You know, just a point of information, or I'm sure people remember, but last year we voted to borrow $2 million, specifically for a few of those things that you mentioned. And I think as of now, so just about a year's gone by, we've spent a little over $1 million of that. And a lot of that, I think at least half of that has gone to road improvements. And then there were improvements to the police department, the town hall, the fire department, and several other things. So we were trying to make some progress against the items that had sort of been put off for a long period of time by doing that. But we don't disagree with you. You know, it's certainly true that we could spend a lot of money really quickly in this town. And we certainly have things that require attention, but we've really felt strongly that the tax rate is such that we want to keep it under control, so. We really
an admirable job keeping it under control. I just hope that we don't become so rigid and look at our taxes as something that can never change. The $2 million bond, for instance, which we clearly desperately needed a lot of the work that you've had done. I would have preferred, and I think a lot of other people would have preferred, that we be gathering that money all along with small tax increases and wouldn't have to take out a bond and pay the interest on it.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I'd like to also state that we've been vigorously working to increase our tax base. And in the process of increasing our tax base, we need to be able to attract people to our community by keeping the tax rate from spiraling up.
I agree with the non-spiral. It's the small increments. If we get used to not having any increases, I think it'll hurt the town in the long run.
John?
Yeah, I know we had, with the water and sewer district, I don't know, I think it was 2009 or so, that we had like a 50% increase. And, you know, what led to it is they didn't need the money in the prior years, but then all of a sudden they needed it. And I think that's what she's saying, if we have some small increments to over a 10-year period rather than 10 years from now, you know, have a big increase. It wouldn't impact people as much as it did then.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Paul.
I was going to say this for the end, and we will be inviting the committee members to come up at the end of the meeting, at the end of our portion of the meeting. Marcia's spot on. We are danger close, especially starting at page 21 with our capital. We have been saying this since Mrs. Scarborough was chair of the board, that we can't continue level funded, and we have said that for 4 years in a row now. And for 4 years, we've been danger close. And it is time to stop. And I agree, there's only one way of, Mrs. Blaine mentioned it. At some point, the taxes have to go up because they just have to go up. We've been sitting, waiting for the economy to recover. We've been sitting, waiting for the tax base to grow. It's not happening. We're danger close, Mr. Chair. Nobody's asking any questions on any of these pages because of these people right here. They're the ones that had to cut their budget by $1.5 million from what they needed in August to where we sit today. And I thank them for having no questions on
I
this.
think it's probably worth pointing out, Marcia, and everybody else, that Joe came to us tonight, not to complain, but to point out that there are places where he's going to need money, or he might need money that just isn't there. You know, relatively small things, like he brought up the tire budget. The tire budget is like $6,000, I think, this year, or $8,000. And, you know, he's got a lot of vehicles that are gonna need tires, and they switch them off, you know, summer, winter, so, you know, we do cut it pretty close, and Joe felt that he needed to come in and tell us, you know, I can probably get by at this time, but I don't know about next time. Of course, this has been happening for a long time, a lot of this.
8 times out of the last 10 years.
Yeah, and we're sympathetic to that, but we're just, you know, nervous about the, you know, ultimately what people pay here and whether people can afford to live here, and whether we don't, you know, decimate the, we don't want to drive people away because we've got the highest taxes in the region. I mean, some of that happens already. People are in the neighboring towns because they don't want to pay the taxes here, you know, even though there are very attractive things about this town. So there's this constant sort of give and take, and it's not easy.
But there is one more factor.
Yes,
We
Paul.
did promise the public last year, if you give us the $2 million bond, we will stay level funded next year. That's part of what drove this when we talked to the board in August.
That's true too, yeah.
With that said, Mr. Chair, we are danger close. We've kept our promise, we'd like to keep our promises.
I think it was more difficult, from what I saw Paul working on this year and everybody else, to keep things level funded than it was last year or the year before or the year before that. You know, I think it's becoming more difficult.
Well, we're receiving, for those that are out there in TV land that don't understand why, and no, Marcia does understand, she's been at our meeting last week, we don't take in the revenues that we used to. We're taking in $1.5 million less in revenue. None of the people in this room are responsible for that.
Right.
830-something thousand less from the state. Tenny Mountain Corridor dropping $45 to $47 million in asset value. We're just down $1.5 million in revenue. Austerity has never set in, as of now.
Anybody else have any comments right now? I think we were on page 21. We'll go to page 22. Page 23. And finally, where the big numbers are, page 24. Paul.
Mr. Chair, this is where I do mention the fact that we are level funded as compared to last year. If revenues go down, September the tax rates could go up. But as of right now, with this budget, we are level funded. And this is the point in the meeting where we invite both Mr. Courier from the Nonprofit Committee and any members of the Budget Committee that want to come up, and I'm assuming we don't have any committee members that want to cut our budget. This is where you're invited to come up and speak to the board. Starting with Mr. Courier.
Mike?
Yep. And Mike will be discussing the nonprofits, which we also kept level funded this year.
They're here.
Whatever you like. Why don't you just sit down, Mike? You've been sitting all day, so, as you said.
Okay.
So, Mr. Courier, you're here to discuss the nonprofit recommendation, right?
And essentially, we looked at what was granted last year, and then we have the amounts that were requested this year. And in light of trying to stay level funded, we pretty much have stayed with what was granted last year. Because I'm not sure, in terms of where we're at in light of what we just heard, we're not really in a position to increase this. So do you want me to go down through each one to indicate what was asked and what's to be given, or?
Well, I think for maybe the people who are not here and don't have the list available, it might be good to just quickly run through the numbers, yes.
Okay. Do you want last year request and this year?
I would just say,
This year's?
there's only two changes, so you can just name them, say they're the same as last year and give the amount, and then,
Sure.
Maybe highlight the two changes.
Okay.
No, that's what I was going to say, Mike, just mention each entity, what they asked for, and we can assume that's what they're getting, except for the two that are different.
The American Red Cross, who was pretty significant over the last year, and I think prior to a few years ago, we really hadn't given them much, but they do an awful lot for the community, and don't ask for anything really. But there was we were granted them $3,141 last year, and we're going to keep that the same this year, $3,141. Katie, Communities for Alcohol and Drug-Free Youth, they were given $8,000 last year, and we're going to maintain that amount again this year. Genesis Behavioral Health was given $7,500 last year, and we're just going to cut that back about $500, so they'll receive $7,000 this year. The Grafton County Senior Citizens Council was granted $15,000 last year, and we're going to keep that the same this year at $15,000. Pemmy Baker Community Health, $15,000 is what they received last year. We're going to continue to give them that same amount for this year. The Bridge House, $13,000 last year. They're going to keep that $13,000 amount for this year. Pemmy Youth Center, $8,000 was what they received last year, and we're going to keep that level at $8,000 for this year. Tri-County Community Action received $7,646 last year. We're going to keep that on the same line as $7,646. Voices Against Violence received $4,000 last year. We'll match that again this year with $4,000. CASA was given $1,000 last year, and we're going to do the same amount this year for $1,000. And Transport Central, which is sort of our effort for access to services, was given $500 last year, and we're going to keep that amount this year, which gives us a collective.
Mike, are we going
No,
up?
we're going up to 1,000.
Oh, that's not what I have here.
Right.
That's where we
because
took the
that was
500 from
500
Genesis.
from Genesis, right?
Okay, but in the column here, I have 500.
We took away 500.
We took
and added
500 from Genesis. Where did that go?
And that went to,
Okay, I see. So that hadn't been added in this column, so I stand
I didn't do it
corrected.
either, Mike. I think
I did.
you did it. But I think what he's saying makes sense.
Okay, so we're looking at Transport Central as $1,000, which I would agree with too. I think that Transport Central is something that provides access to services, which all the nonprofits that we have, I think that's essential, and something we probably will be looking at in the future to see how much of a positive impact that may add to our folks getting to the services that they need.
And then the bottom line is the same as it was last year. I see a total of 82,787.
Yep, so that's the total amount. Anything else?
Unless, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding our proposed nonprofit grants or budget items? If not,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Mike. Thanks for all your work on this, too. I know it's, even when the numbers stay the same, a lot of work goes into thinking about it and making a recommendation. The Budget Committee? But you agree with Marcia? Is that, yeah.
Well, as Paul said, you know, it's something that I said for the years that I was on the board, that we can't just, it's not gonna happen forever, but again, you know, last year, that was the promise made to the public, that we're gonna keep it level funded if we get this $2 million bond, so.
Okay. All right, if there is nothing else, I think I can close the public hearing on the budget.
Just one minute,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Paul.
They requested 1726. They received 500 last year, therefore they should receive 500.
With 4,000 to the good, right? So we were short $500.
Are we okay now?
We can take it from someplace else.
Okay.
Let's just show you how tight the budget is.
Okay. All right.
So you do have a number that's going to change, though.
What number is going to
Page
change?
24,
Yep.
this is $3,508,000. Right-hand corner,
Yep.
that's got to go up by 500.
Is that
That's
because of
gotta
that
go-
500 we were
Instead of
just,
140, it's got to go up to 640,
and that's that 500 we were just talking about? Yeah, okay.
which still puts us about $4,000 less than the previous year.
Okay. Well, let's pretend I didn't close the budget hearing before, and we'll close it now. See if I've got- we have-
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
want to just excuse the department heads that would like to
oh,
leave?
and if the department heads would like to go, please do.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming, we appreciate that. Ann appears to be the next person on our agenda.
In your package, Mike, did you have a purchase order? You do.
Purchase/lease down payment for excavator.
Okay, since we had our public hearing and our special town meeting,
Could I, yes, ma'am? Did you?
can't hear.
Oh, she can't hear you, Ann, I think.
Okay. Since we had our special town meeting, we now have authorization for the selectmen to borrow or to take the funds out of the capital reserve fund. So I need a motion from the board to withdraw the funds in the amount of $100,000 from the material handling capital reserve fund in order for us to continue with the purchase of that piece of equipment for the highway
All right,
department.
do we have such a motion?
Make a motion that we take out $100,000 for the purchase of the equipment.
Second.
All right, so we got a motion by Mike, second by Neil. May I just ask a question? It says purchase/lease down payment. Is this a,
It will be a lease. They call it a lease. There's two payments that'll be due after this. But right now, we're only paying the $100,000 upfront, which is the money that we have in the capital reserve.
But when this is over, we're going to own it, right?
You will own it, yes.
Okay, so it's like a lease purchase
It is.
type of thing, okay. I just want to make sure we understood that. Okay, so with the motion second, is there any other discussion on this? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the next item pertaining to the same, I know I'm only on there for the purchase order. I do have the documentation that needs to be signed for the lease, and I will ask that the board appoint Paul Freitas as the signing agent.
We have a motion to appoint Paul Freitas as agent to sign the lease purchase agreement for the excavator. Yes.
Didn't Mike already sign, or is this different?
That's just the understanding that we had with them before we went to the special town meeting.
That's when we were asking them not to sell it.
Right.
Okay.
I move that Paul Freitas be authorized as signing agent for this contract.
Second.
So a motion by Neil, second by Bill, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Sounds like we've got it. Do we have committee reports?
I went to a planning board meeting Thursday night, and was an application for some sort of youth center, the old, is it the bookstore?
It's the old bookstore, yeah.
So they came in and gave a presentation, and there was a conditional approval. And there's a couple of things that the town still is going to look at. I guess the applicant has access to many different musical artists that they might bring in, someone that the kids, or more 18 to 21-year-olds, would recognize the names, and they want to have, they talked about having some kind of 50-inch plasma screens, I guess, on the wall where the kids can do garage band competitions. It would be something that would be open during the day, and then on weekends, every so often, they would probably bring in an artist, and they talked about bringing in their own security detail, which I guess they do that type of work. The applicant lives in Wentworth, and I think they're talking about, they'd like to open it around March.
Was this a site plan review?
Yes, so it'd be a change of use from a retail to more of a, I'm not sure how I would classify that use.
Youth entertainment, I don't know.
Yeah, recreation, entertainment, something like that. Okay. So there was a conditional approval voted on.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else?
I attended a Conservation Commission meeting last week. One of the topics that we covered was the planning to pursue a joint effort with Holderness, the town of Holderness, Ashland, and Holderness School, and the university possibly, regarding security and preservation of what's known as the Oxbow wetland, which is a very large wetland complex which is located on the east side of the Pemmy. Part of it's on land that the town of Plymouth owns. It's between the golf course and the university and the interstate.
The golf course?
Yeah. The North Ashland Golf Course.
Right.
And
Okay.
It is a very large wetland complex, and there's critical habitat there, and there's also a great amount of abuse going on and security problems. So we're planning to develop a joint effort to try to have some control over that area. And also, we discussed pursuing an investigation into drainage issues on Tenny Mountain Highway and wildlife corridor crossings across the highway. That's a big problem. And they also discussed trails and maintenance of trails and some financial issues.
Anybody else?
I met with the Budget Committee last Wednesday night, the Budget and CIP Committee, to kind of go over what was done tonight, so.
All right. I think, unless anybody has any new business or old business, we can probably go into a non-public session. And thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. It's been a great night. Carol. Mark. Bye, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Have a good night.
You too.
See you up.
Under 91A, I move that we go into non-public.
Second.
Right, yeah, what?
Go around the room.
Oh, well, we've got the statutory reasons right there. I was wondering about that. What are we, I mean, one of them
You're
is...
going to hit every single one.
We're going to hit it?
A through I.
Yeah, A through I. Well, one of them